The stick came down hard and split the air before it split the skin on my forearm, and I swear the sound still rings in my head when it's quiet. Joy stepped in front of me, small, trembling, brave, and said the words that changed everything. If he leaves, I go with him. Neighbors gasped, her father raised the stick again, and a stranger in dirty sandals stood there like he had no right to breathe. Only I wasn't a stranger at all. I was Richard Blake, 35, the guy on magazine covers, the man with the hotels and the malls and an elevator that went up and down in an empty house. Before that day, I thought money could fill silence. You know what I mean? Turn the volume up and somehow drown the loneliness. So I built a palace that didn't echo because the rugs were too thick and the walls were too soft. 10 bedrooms and no one calling my name, a pool with perfect chlorine levels, and no one splashing, a private cinema that smelled like butter and leather, and never once of popcorn, because who makes popcorn for one? I dated, or I tried to, and it started to feel like shopping lists dressed up as romance. How much is the car? What about the house? Can you cover my designer habit? One woman sent a PDF with rings circled in red, like a homework assignment. Yeah, that happened. And I laughed until I realized I wasn't laughing anymore. One rainy night, I told my best friend Ben I was tired of fake smiles and fake love and fake toasts to forever that didn't last through dessert. And he said, "Find someone who sees your heart before your bank account." And I said, "How not when every room I walk into shouts my name before I speak?" That's when the idea hit me and scared me in the same breath. What if I disappear for a while? What if I become small? What if I test the world the way the world keeps testing me? Ben dropped his spoon like it burned him. "You'll get hurt out there," he said. And I told him something already hurts. It just wears a suit. I packed a small bag like a coward and a soldier. At the same time, old clothes, a torn blanket, enough cash for one day, no cards, no watch, no phone. I rubbed dirt into my hands until clean hurt to look at. I scuffed my face, I switched out leather shoes for sandals that knew the ground, and I stood at my own front door and whispered goodbye like the house might whisper it back. Then I took a bus to a part of the city I only knew from tinted windows, an area where people work too hard for too little, where a good day is a day, nothing bad happens. And I sat beside a dirty alley with a tin cup and my head down trying to be invisible when invisibility was the point. Here's the first lesson the street taught me. Being poor isn't a costume you put on. It's how people teach themselves not to see you because seeing costs something. They looked away, they pinched their noses, they tossed coins without aim like they were feeding pigeons. A teenage boy laughed. A few said, "God bless you," and kept walking. Night fell with the sound of tires hissing over rain, and I curled up under a bridge with men whose names I didn't know, and a rat that knew my back like a map. On the fourth day, my legs shook, my lips cracked, and I was ready to close my eyes just to stop wanting. When a soft voice said hello, I looked up. A girl in a simple yellow dress stood in front of me like sunlight, in a place the sun forgot to touch, hair in a neat bun, eyes that carried concern without the weight of pity, and she asked if I had eaten. I shook my head, and she looked in her small purse and sighed. "I don't have money right now, but please wait. I'll go home and bring you food." "Don't go, okay? Stay here." No one had said please to me all week, so I said, "Okay." And she smiled and said, "My name is Joy. Don't forget I'm coming back." And then she ran, like kindness running late to its own appointment. 15 minutes later, she returned with a small black bag, jollof rice and a piece of fish still warm, and I ate with my hands too fast. And she laughed, "Slow down, don't choke." And for a second, it felt like we were old friends who'd just misplaced each other for a few years. We sat in silence that wasn't heavy, and she asked where I slept, and I told her about the bridge, about the cold that crawls inside your bones, and the sounds that never sleep. And she sucked in air like the thought hurt her. That place isn't safe, she said. People get robbed and hurt. And then she said something you never hear from a world that moves too fast. Wait here again, let me ask my mother. Maybe you can sleep in our compound. If it were you, what would you have done? Follow a stranger's kindness or follow fear back to the bridge? I waited. She came back with yes and rules that sounded like safety. Dressed as caution, you can stay in a small room near the backyard. But don't walk around during the day, don't make noise. My father listens to my stepmother more than he listens to his own heartbeat. And if they find you here, they will throw you out and insult my mother, do you understand? I did. She led me through the back gate past a small kitchen that smelled like pepper and soap into a room with a bare floor and a window that stuck and a wooden door that knew how to keep quiet. And it felt like 5 stars to me because fear didn't sleep there. Her mother arrived with a mat, a bucket soap, and a voice that was firm without being hard. You can stay, she said, but you must respect this house. No noise, no wandering, rest and eat. You need strength. And I said yes, Ma, because respect is the only rent a human being should pay to be allowed to heal. That night, I washed behind the kitchen, where the moon could see, but the neighbors couldn't. I ate rice and stew, and for the first time in days, the ceiling didn't feel like it was falling. Morning, a soft knock. It's me, Joy. And she slipped in with bread, a boiled egg, hot tea, and the warmest good morning I'd heard in years. We talked like people learning the edges of each other. She asked how long I had been on the street, and I said, life turned upside down, and I lost everything. Not a lie exactly, just a truth missing some parts. And she nodded and let the missing pieces belong to me. For 2 days, she brought food. Her mother checked that I was breathing, and not a fool, and I stayed invisible by daylight and watched dust motes float like tiny meteors in the slanted light. And that's when the house began to notice. Martha, Joy's stepsister, started watching Joy the way a cat watches a door, eyes awake at odd hours, a little too interested in where plates went and where buckets came from. And one night she tapped at my door and whispered "Hoy" in a voice that wasn't Joy. I opened without thinking, and she slipped inside and locked the door. And she did the kind of slow stare that makes you want to wash your skin again. So it's true, she said. This is where the food goes. I told her I would leave before dawn. I apologized. Like apology was a currency that could buy me time. And she stepped closer and said, you're handsome and clean, and you will sleep with me now, and I will keep your secret. I moved away, something old and stubborn in me. Stood up and I said, respect yourself. I won't trade my dignity for silence, and her eyes went cold and hot. At the same time, she laughed without laughing, and then screamed, Daddy, help a stranger, he wants to hurt me. It felt like the compound woke all at once. Locks slid, feet slapped the ground. Her father stormed in with a stick, Madame Stella behind him, throwing words like stones, and in seconds, I became the villain of a story I wasn't writing. Joy ran out, grabbed my hand, and shouted, he didn't do anything. Martha is lying, and her father looked at her like she'd betrayed the weather. You brought a man into my house like a snake. Then came the moment I started with. Joy stepped in front of me and said, if he leaves, I go with him. Do you think that's fair? A lie weighing more than a life because pride held the scale. Her father gave me 10 minutes to disappear, and Joy's mother, who had kept the roof from falling as long as she could, finally saw it was better to leave the house than to lose her soul. Pack a few things, she said. We're going. We walked under a wide sky to the edge of town where her parents had left a small old house with 2 rooms. a little kitchen, a bathroom at the back walls dusty but honest, a gate that squeaked like it was happy to be opened again. We swept and aired and laughed because sometimes the sound you make when you're scared and free is the same sound. Days turned simple, which is another word for peaceful if you've lived without it. Joy's mother started selling vegetables again. Joy helped at the market. I did small jobs for people who needed 2 hands and a steady back, cutting grass, fixing windows, carrying water, and they paid in coins and thanks, both of which felt new in my palm. At night, we sat under a mango tree, crickets writing songs they never finish, and we talked about dreams, like they were groceries we could finally afford. She wanted to finish school and become a nurse. I wanted to build a life that didn't need a price tag to prove it was real. One night I held her hand and told her I loved her, and she smiled with teary eyes and said she loved me too, and the truth sat between us like a warm bowl that never empties. Stick around, because of what happened next will blow your mind. I told Joy I needed to go to the city, not to run to return, to work, to prepare, to make a life that could hold us both without wobbling. And she said, "Please don't break my heart." And I said, "I will come back better and stronger, I swear it." Back in the city, I walked through gates that once made me feel tall and went straight to my father, Mr. Blake, a man who taught me that money is loud and character is quiet. And I told him everything from the bus ride to the bridge to the back room to the mango tree. He listened without touching his watch. Then he smiled and said, "So the girl fed your stomach when the world starved your soul, then she is the one, let's go meet her." We drove back to the village the next day, a clean car rolling past houses that talked to the road, and when I stepped out with my father behind me, Joy blinked, like the sun changed shape. "You look different," she said. "You look rich," and I said, "I am, and I am sorry for hiding it. I needed to know if love lives where money doesn't." And she handed me forgiveness with a breath and a nod. Because some people know a heart even when the clothes change. I asked her to marry me and she said yes. And then she did the thing that made me love her more. She said, "Now you must do it the right way. Go to my father, collect the list, follow the steps." Our people respect, and my father nodded, because respect is a language elders hear clearly. We went to her father's compound and stood under the mango tree where a stick had tried to teach me a lesson. And we said, "We are here to do the proper thing. My son wishes to marry your daughter." And her father leaned back like a man who just remembered a rule that might save his pride. "Never," he said. "In this house, the first daughter marries before the second. Marry Martha as well, or wait until she finds a husband." A laugh caught in my throat and died there. My father stood up and said, "That is ridiculous. Love is not a numbered ticket," and her father shrugged. "Tradition is tradition. Take it or leave it. If it were you, what would you have done? Wait indefinitely on someone else's timeline, or fight a rule that punishes the wrong people?" On the drive back, my father snapped his fingers like he'd just remembered a password. "My old school friend is a king now. His palace isn't far. Let's go." And I stared at him, because when your father mixes school friend and king in the same sentence, you either laugh or buckle up. Guards opened a white gate, red tiles shone like polished apples, and then I watched 2 old men hug like boys who survived the same storm, and the king listened while my father told our story, and laughed in disbelief that custom ended last year. He said, "Too many women waiting on sisters who didn't even like them. Any daughter may marry when love finds her." Then he sent a royal messenger to summon Joy's father. The next morning, Joy's father knelt in a hall that smelled like history and palm oil, and the king's voice filled it. "I have heard of your behavior. That tradition you quoted is gone. Accept the marriage or accept the consequences." And he lowered his head and said, "Yes, your majesty, because pride shouts only until authority answers." We returned to Joy with the news, and she covered her face and cried from relief, not fear, and we began to plan a wedding that sounded like drums and laughter and smelled like new fabric and stew. On the day Joy walked toward me in white and I forgot how to breathe. For a second elders blessed us, neighbors smiled, her father came forward smaller now and gave a late blessing that sounded like I'm sorry wearing a different suit, and my father squeezed my shoulder like a man who knows a good ending when he sees one. After the wedding, I brought Joy and her mother to the city, and the mansion finally learned what a home sounds like: a kettle whistling a lullaby under someone's breath. A note on the counter that says, "Buy plantains and don't forget my tea." We gave her mother a room with sunlight and a view of flowers that were no longer just landscaping. They were proof that beauty can be shared and life settled into something I used to think money could buy, and learned it never could. Back in the village, Madame Stella and Martha boiled with anger, and when pride couldn't swallow the truth, they looked for magic to chew it. Instead, they boarded a bus on a stormy night to see a man who sells power he never owned. The road curved, the tires lost their grip, and by morning the news spread with the speed of grief. I won't pretend I cheered. Death is not a trophy. But I also won't lie and say the house they left got quieter only because sound traveled slower. Sometimes the absence of cruelty sounds like peace. 2 weeks later, Joy's father came to our gate with tears and regret. He knelt and begged Joy's mother to come back to fix the house he broke, to sit at a table he finally cleared of poison. And she looked at him with eyes that had learned the hard shape of boundaries and said, "Never." Not because forgiveness isn't real, because peace is sacred, and she had finally found hers. He said, "I am not the same man," and she said, "You are the same man, only weaker now," and that's when I learned a lesson I didn't expect. Sometimes the bravest love is the love you keep for yourself when returning would drown you. Do you think that's fair? A door closing on a man who finally says sorry? Or is that what accountability sounds like when words arrive too late? A year passed, and God gave us twin boys who came with lungs and opinions. David and Daniel, tiny fists that punctuated a sentence Joy had been writing since the day she carried a warm bag of rice down a dusty road, and our home filled with baby cries and soft singing, and the kind of exhaustion that proves you're exactly where you should be. At night, I carry them through the garden and tell them a story about a man who left a palace to sit on a curb, about a girl who fed a stranger, because kindness doesn't need a biography, about a mother who chose courage over comfort, about a king who said, "Love is not a ladder," about a father who learned humility the hardest way there is. Now I want to ask you straight, no performance, just person to person. Was I wrong to test love by hiding who I was? Is there a better way to find truth in a world where money talks so loud it drowns out the heartbeat? Or did the test prove something the world refuses to show us any other way? Should Joy's mother have gone back for the sake of a history that hurt, or did protecting her peace protect everyone, including him, in the long run? Do traditions protect us, or do they become cages when pride keeps the key? Where would you draw the line between respect and obedience, between culture and control? And tell me honestly, is wealth ever neutral, or does it always bend the story quietly and visibly until someone brave enough says stop? If you stayed with me this far, thank you. From the elevator to the alley, to the mango tree, to the palace, to the front porch, where two boys fall asleep on our chests. This is the road I took to find something. The market can't sell you a hand that reaches back when you reach out. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If it were you, what would you have done? Was it fair to test? Love was Joy's mother right to say, never should a king step into a family fight, or should some battles stay at the dinner table. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing our little map light up and share this with someone who needs a reminder that character still counts. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. And if a stranger's kindness ever saved you for a day or for a lifetime, tell us that story. We're listening.